I'm 74 years old and I know who killed my son. Not the accident, not chance, not fate. His wife, the woman I disliked from the first meeting, and whom my Daniel loved so much that he stopped seeing me. She isolated him, cut him off from family, turned my kind boy into a stranger who called once a month and spoke her words. And then he died. An accident on an empty road. Brakes failed. Tragedy. No one to blame. She got everything. The house, the insurance, his savings. And I got emptiness. But the neighbor's dog knew the truth. An old beagle named Chester started coming to my door. Every day, sat and howled. His owner, my daughter-in-law's neighbor, told me something strange. The dog had been acting this way since the night that woman was digging something in her garden. After the funeral, at 3 a.m, what did she bury? Why does the dog howl? And why don't I believe in accidents anymore? My name is Margaret Ellen Holloway. I'm 74 years old, and I'm going to tell you how my daughter-in-law murdered my son and how a neighbor's dog helped me prove it. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. This helps other people find our stories. I need to start with Daniel, my boy, my only child. Because without understanding who he was, you won't understand what she took from me. Daniel was born when I was 26 years old, after 3 miscarriages and 2 years of trying. The doctors had told me I might never carry to term, but Daniel, my Daniel, held on. He came into this world fighting, and he spent the next 47 years being the kindest, gentlest soul I ever knew. His father passed when Daniel was 12. Heart attack at the office, no warning, gone in an instant. After that, it was just the two of us, me working double shifts at the hospital. I was a nurse for 41 years, and Daniel growing up too fast, becoming the man of the house before he was ready. But he never complained, never acted out, never gave me a moment of trouble. He was good, genuinely, purely good. The kind of person who stopped to help strangers with flat tires, who volunteered at soup kitchens on Christmas, who called his mother every single day until her. Her name is Victoria Ann Mercer, before she became Victoria Holloway. Daniel met her at a work conference when he was 43. He was an accountant. Boring, he always said, but steady. Good salary, good benefits, good retirement plan. He dated over the years, but nothing serious. "I'm waiting for the right one, Mom," he'd tell me. "I'll know her when I see her." He saw Victoria, and he thought he knew. She was younger, 34 then, almost 10 years his junior. Beautiful, in that sharp way that always made me uneasy. High cheekbones, cold blue eyes, a smile that never quite reached them. She worked in marketing, something to do with luxury brands. She dressed like money even before she had it. Daniel brought her home to meet me after 3 months of dating. I remember opening the door and seeing them standing on my porch. My son, beaming like I hadn't seen him beam in years, and this woman beside him with her designer coat and her perfect manicure and her eyes that assessed my home like a real estate agent calculating square footage. "Mom, this is Victoria, the one I told you about." "Mrs. Holloway," Victoria said, and she smiled that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel's told me so much about you." She hadn't called me Margaret, hadn't even asked if she could call me Mom, the way Daniel's previous girlfriends had. Mrs. Holloway, formal, distant, a line drawn in the sand from the very first word. I should have said something then, should have pulled Daniel aside, told him my concerns, but he looked so happy, so hopeful. And what could I say? I don't like her smile. Her eyes are cold. She looked at my house like she was calculating its resale value. I said nothing. I smiled and hugged her and said it was lovely to meet her, That was my first mistake. There would be many more. They married 8 months later, a small ceremony. Victoria said she didn't want anything excessive. At a venue that cost more than my car. Her family didn't come. She said she was estranged from them, had been for years. Bad people, she told Daniel. You're lucky you have Margaret. I noticed she still didn't call me Mom. The wedding was beautiful. Daniel was beautiful. And Victoria was Victoria. Perfect hair, perfect dress, perfect vows that sounded like they'd been copied from a greeting card. I gave a toast, welcomed her to the family, said I was gaining a daughter. She thanked me, called me Margaret for the first time, but her eyes were somewhere else, on the guests, calculating who was worth knowing, who could be useful. After the wedding, things changed. At first, it was small. Daniel's daily calls became every other day, then twice a week, then once a week, then once every 2 weeks, and Daniel, I haven't heard from you in 3 weeks. Sorry, Mom, we've been busy. Victoria has a lot of social obligations, dinners, events, networking. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. My social obligations had been taking care of patients and taking care of my son. But I said nothing. The visits became rarer, too. Before Victoria, Daniel came for dinner every Sunday. After Victoria, it was once a month. Then every other month. Then holidays only. Then, Daniel, you missed Thanksgiving. I know, Mom, I'm sorry. Victoria's work thing ran late, and we just couldn't make the drive. The drive was 45 minutes. It used to be nothing. Now it was an insurmountable obstacle. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, the bitter mother-in-law who couldn't let go of her son. Victoria had a demanding career. They were building a life together. These things took time and energy. But I watched my son disappear piece by piece. His phone calls grew shorter, his excuses longer. When we did talk, he sounded different, careful, like he was choosing his words, like someone might be listening. Someone probably was. 3 years into the marriage, I confronted him. It was Christmas, one of the rare occasions when he actually came to see me. Victoria had stayed home, claiming a migraine. Daniel sat in my living room looking tired, looking older than his years. Daniel, what's happening to you? What do you mean? I mean you, us. We used to be so close. Now I barely see you. You barely call. When you do call, you sound like a stranger. He was quiet for a long moment. Victoria thinks. He stopped, started again. We've just been busy, Mom, building our life. It takes all our energy. Victoria thinks what? Nothing. Daniel. He sighed, rubbed his face with his hands. She thinks you don't like her, that you've never accepted her. She says she can tell by the way you look at her. I've never been anything but welcoming to that woman. See? That woman. That's what she means. You can't even say her name. Her name is Victoria, and I've said it plenty of times. I've invited her to every family gathering, every holiday, every... It's not about the invitations, Mom. It's about how you make her feel. She says being around you makes her feel judged, unwelcome. I stared at my son, my kind, gentle son who had never said a cruel word to anyone in his life, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Distance, a wall, something between us that hadn't been there before. Daniel, I think she's isolating you. What? I've read about this. People who manipulate their partners, cut them off from family, make them dependent. Stop. His voice was sharp, sharper than I'd ever heard it. Victoria is my wife. She loves me, and I won't sit here and listen to you accuse her of... I'm not accusing, I'm worried. You're jealous. You've always been jealous? You can't stand that there's another woman in my life, that I don't need you the way I used to? He stood up. His face was flushed, his hands shaking. I think I should go. Daniel, please. I'll call you when things calm down." He left. He didn't call for 2 months, and when he finally did, his voice was carefully neutral, and he suggested we take some time apart to let things settle. I didn't see my son again for 11 months. The last time I saw him alive was at a restaurant, a neutral location Victoria had suggested, where we made stilted conversation over salads, and he told me he was happy and fine and just busy, while his eyes said something else entirely. That was 3 weeks before he died. The police officer who came to my door was young, too young. He held his hat in his hands and said the words no mother should ever have to hear. "Mrs. Holloway, I'm very sorry. There's been an accident. Your son Daniel." I don't remember much after that. Fragments, images, the officer's face, my own screaming, though I don't remember opening my mouth. Someone helping me to a chair. A glass of water I couldn't hold because my hands were shaking too badly. The accident had happened on a rural road, about 20 miles from Daniel's house. He'd been driving alone, coming back from a client meeting, Victoria said later. It was night, rainy. His brakes had failed on a curve. The car went through a guardrail and down an embankment. He died on impact, they said. He didn't suffer. I didn't believe that then. I don't believe it now. I think dying always involves suffering, even if it's just the split second of knowing what's coming. The funeral was 3 days later. Victoria organized everything. Black dress, perfect makeup, tears that looked real enough if you weren't paying attention. But I was paying attention. I saw how she checked her phone during the service, how her eyes wandered to the other mourners, calculating, assessing, how she accepted condolences with the same detached grace she'd shown at the wedding. This woman was not grieving, she was performing. But what could I say? What could I do? My son was dead. Accusing his widow of insufficient sadness wouldn't bring him back, so I said nothing. Again. After the funeral, Victoria approached me, took my hands in her cold, dry fingers. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. Daniel loved you so much." "Did he?" I wanted to ask. "Because for the last 4 years, I've barely seen him. Because you took him from me, piece by piece, until there was nothing left." "Thank you for coming," she said, as if I were a guest at a party. "I know things have been difficult between us, but I hope we can move forward for Daniel's sake." For Daniel's sake, as if Daniel could still benefit from anything we did, as if he weren't lying in a box about to go into the ground. "Of course," I said, because what else could I say? She squeezed my hands, smiled that smile, and I went home to my empty house and cried until I had nothing left. The insurance payout was substantial, $350,000. Daniel had always been responsible about these things. The house was paid off. There were savings, investments, a pension from his company. Victoria, as the surviving spouse, got everything. I got a few boxes of Daniel's childhood things, report cards, Little League trophies, photos from before she existed. She sent them over with a courier, didn't even deliver them herself. That was it. 47 years of my son's life, reduced to cardboard boxes and a life insurance check made out to someone else. The weeks after the funeral blurred together. I stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, stopped doing much of anything except sitting in Daniel's old room. I'd kept it exactly as it was when he moved out, and staring at the walls. People called, friends, distant relatives, former colleagues from the hospital. I let the calls go to voicemail. What was there to say? My son was dead. My daughter-in-law had won. Game over. And then the dog appeared. It was 3 weeks after the funeral when I first noticed him. I was sitting on my porch. I'd started doing that, sitting and staring at nothing, waiting for time to pass, when I heard it. A howl, not a bark, not a whine, but a long, mournful howl that seemed to come from deep inside some small creature's soul. I looked around. Saw a dog sitting at the edge of my driveway, a beagle, old from the gray on his muzzle, brown and white with long floppy ears and sad eyes, just sitting there, looking at me. Shoo, I said, go home. The dog didn't move. He tilted his head, then opened his mouth and howled again. That same long, eerie, heartbroken sound. I went inside, closed the door, tried to forget about it, but the next day, he was back. And the day after that, and the day after that. Every morning, the beagle would appear on my driveway. He'd sit for hours, sometimes howling, sometimes just watching my house with those sad eyes. Then, around sunset, he'd leave. He was wearing a collar, so he wasn't a stray. He wasn't injured, wasn't starving. He just came. Day after day, like he was waiting for something. After a week of this, I decided to find out where he belonged. I walked out to him, slowly, carefully, in case he was skittish, and checked the tag on his collar. Chester, if found, call Barbara Simmons. Phone number, Barbara Simmons. The name was vaguely familiar. I called the number. Hello? Hi, my name is Margaret Holloway. I think I have your dog. Chester? Oh, heavens, is he at your house again? Again, so she knew about this. He's been coming every day for about a week now, just sits on my driveway and howls. I'm so sorry. He's been doing this since the accident, the one with your son. I'm so sorry for your loss, by the way. Daniel was always so nice. Said hello whenever I saw him. I went still. You knew Daniel? Well, not really new, but I'm Victoria's neighbor. Lived next door to them for the past 2 years. Daniel was always friendly. Victoria's more private, keeps to herself. Victoria's neighbor. This woman lived next door to my daughter-in-law. Why would your dog come to my house? I asked. I live 45 minutes away. That's what I can't figure out. Chester's never done anything like this before. He's 12 years old, barely leaves the yard most days. But since that night, she stopped. Since what night? Silence on the line. Then quietly, maybe we should talk in person. Can I come pick up Chester? I can explain when I get there. Yes, I said. Please do. Barbara Simmons was 68 years old, a retired school teacher with kind eyes and nervous hands. She arrived 40 minutes later in an old Honda, apologizing profusely for Chester's behavior. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's never run off before. And 45 minutes away. He's an old dog. How does he even make that journey? I didn't know, but I had more pressing questions. You said he's been acting strange since that night. What night? Barbara's nervous hands twisted together. She looked around as if someone might be listening. Can we go inside? We sat at my kitchen table. Chester lay at Barbara's feet, finally calm, finally quiet, but his eyes were still watching me. Mrs. Holloway, Margaret, I don't know if I should be telling you this. It might be nothing. It probably is nothing, but please tell me. The night after the funeral, Daniel's funeral, I couldn't sleep. I never can. Insomnia for years now. And around 3 a.m, Chester started going crazy, barking, howling, scratching at the door. He's never done that. He's the quietest dog. What was he reacting to? I got up to check, looked out my window, and I saw... She hesitated. I saw Victoria in her backyard with a shovel. My heart stopped. She was digging? Digging. At 3 a.m, it was dark, but there was enough moonlight to see. She dug a hole, put something in it, a bag, I think, or a box, something small, and filled it back in, covered it with leaves, then went inside. Did you call the police? And tell them what? That I saw my neighbor gardening at night? It's not illegal. Maybe she was burying a dead pet. Maybe she was planting something. I don't know. Barbara shook her head. But Chester knew something was wrong. He's been weird ever since. Won't go in the backyard. Growls at Victoria whenever he sees her. And now this. Running away, coming here, howling at your door. Why my door? I don't know. Maybe he knows you're connected to it somehow. Dogs are smart. They sense things we don't. I looked at Chester. He looked back at me with those sad, knowing eyes. Dogs sense things we don't. Barbara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Of course. Did you ever see anything else strange? Between Victoria and Daniel? Arguments, tension, anything? Barbara was quiet for a long moment. Daniel was unhappy, she finally said. I could tell, the last few months especially. He looked worn down, tired, like he was carrying something heavy. Did he ever say anything? Once, about 3 months before the accident. We ran into each other getting the mail, and he looked so sad that I asked if he was okay. He said, she closed her eyes, remembering, I think I made a mistake, Mrs. Simmons, a big one, and I don't know how to fix it. My heart ached. My son, my poor son. Did he say what mistake? No. Victoria came out then, called him inside. He went. He always did what she told him. Anything else? Just one thing, and this is probably nothing. But a few weeks before the accident, I saw a man at their house. Not Daniel, someone else. Young, good-looking, drove a fancy car. He was there while Daniel was at work. I saw him twice. A man? At the house, while Daniel was at work. Did Victoria know you saw him? I don't think so. I never mentioned it. It wasn't my business. But it was my business now. After Barbara left, with Chester, who had to be dragged to the car and howled all the way down the street, I sat alone in my kitchen and thought, Victoria digging in the garden at 3 a.m., Chester's strange behavior, Daniel's unhappiness, a mysterious man visiting while Daniel was at work, and the accident. The accident that killed my son on a rural road on a rainy night with brakes that inexplicably failed. I'd accepted the police's conclusion. Accident, mechanical failure, tragedy, no one to blame. But what if there was someone to blame? What if the brakes hadn't failed on their own? I started my investigation the next day. I'm 74 years old. I'm not a detective, not a police officer, not a private investigator. I'm a retired nurse who's buried a husband and now a son. I have no training in criminal investigation. But I have something better. I have nothing left to lose. The first step was getting the accident report. I called the police station, asked for copies, said I needed them for insurance purposes. They sent them over without question. The report was clinical. Daniel's vehicle, a 3-year-old sedan, well-maintained, had been traveling at approximately 50 miles per hour when it failed to negotiate a curve. Brake failure was listed as the probable cause. The brake lines had ruptured, causing complete loss of braking ability. Ruptured. Not worn out. Ruptured. I called a mechanic, an old friend, Tony, who'd worked on my cars for 30 years. Tony, if someone wanted to sabotage brake lines, make them fail at a specific time, how would they do it? Silence on the line. Margaret, what kind of question is that? Just hypothetically. Hypothetically. More silence. You could nick them, score them with a blade not all the way through, just enough to weaken them. They'd hold for a while, but every time the brakes were used, the pressure would push at the weak point. Eventually, they'd give way. How long would that take? Depends on how deep you cut. Could be days, could be weeks, could be the next time they hit the brakes hard. Days, weeks, the next time they hit the brakes hard. Daniel died on a curve, on a rainy night, on a road he drove regularly, a road where he would need to brake. Tony, if someone did this, would it show up in an inspection? Depends on how thorough the inspection was. If the cops were looking for sabotage, yeah, they'd probably find evidence of scoring or tampering. But if they assumed it was an accident, they might not look that close. They assumed it was an accident. Of course they did. Why wouldn't they? A car crashes, brakes fail, sad story. Case closed. But I wasn't closing anything. The next step was harder. I needed to get onto Victoria's property. I needed to see what she'd buried in that garden. This was where things got complicated. I couldn't just walk into her backyard and start digging. That was trespassing. And if I found something and called the police, any evidence would be tainted, obtained illegally. I needed a legal way in. I needed Victoria to let me in herself. I called her. Victoria, it's Margaret. A long pause. Margaret, how are you? I'm managing. I was wondering if I could come by. Pick up some of Daniel's things, anything you don't want to keep. Another pause. I could almost hear her calculating. Of course. When were you thinking? This weekend, Saturday? Saturday works. Come by around 2. Thank you, Victoria. Of course, we're family after all. Family! The word made me want to scream, but I said nothing. I thanked her again and hung up. And then I started planning. Saturday came. I dressed carefully. Old clothes, sturdy shoes, a large purse with a plastic bag inside, a small trowel wrapped in newspaper, and a phone with a fully charged battery. Victoria's house, Daniel's house really, the house he'd bought with his savings before she ever came along, was in a nice neighborhood. Manicured lawns, 2-car garages, the American dream in brick and siding. I parked in the driveway, walked to the door, rang the bell. Victoria answered wearing black yoga pants and a designer sweater, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. A widow in mourning, if mourning came with a personal stylist. Margaret, come in. The house was immaculate, not a single trace of Daniel visible. No photos, no personal items, nothing to suggest a man had lived and died here. I've boxed up a few things, Victoria said, gesturing to 2 cardboard boxes by the stairs. Old books mostly, some clothes I thought you might want. Thank you. I made a show of looking through the boxes while Victoria watched, arms crossed, impatient. Take your time, she said, in a tone that meant the opposite. Actually, Victoria, would you mind if I use the bathroom? Of course. Down the hall, second door on the left. I went, but I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the back of the house, to the sunroom that overlooked the backyard. I looked out at the garden. It was beautiful, professionally landscaped, roses and hostas and ornamental grasses. Near the back fence, there was a section that looked newer than the rest. Fresher mulch, plants that hadn't quite settled in. That was the spot, I was sure of it. But I couldn't dig there now. Not with Victoria watching. I needed another plan. I went back to the living room, gathered the boxes, thanked Victoria. Can I ask you something? I said at the door. Of course. How are you doing? Really? Losing Daniel so suddenly. Her face did something complicated, almost looked like genuine emotion for half a second. I'm managing, she said. It's hard, but life goes on. Life goes on. My son was dead, and life goes on. If you ever need anything, thank you, Margaret. I'll keep that in mind. I left, drove away, but I didn't go home. I parked 2 streets over and waited for dark. At 11 p.m., I walked back to Victoria's house. The lights were off. The neighborhood was quiet. I moved through the shadows, heart pounding, feeling ridiculous and terrified and determined all at once. I was 74 years old, breaking into my daughter-in-law's backyard. If someone saw me, I'd be arrested, or shot, or both. But I had to know. The fence was 6 feet high, wooden, with a gate on the side that was, thank God, unlocked. I slipped through, crept across the lawn, made my way to the back corner. The new section, the fresh mulch, I knelt down, took out my trowel, started digging. The soil was soft, recently turned. I didn't have to dig deep, maybe 6 inches, before my trowel hit something solid. I pulled it out, a metal box, small, like a cash box or a jewelry case, locked. I didn't try to open it there. I put it in my bag, filled in the hole as best I could, scattered the mulch back over it. Then I left, the same way I came. I was 2 blocks away, almost to my car, when I heard the howl. Chester, standing on Barbara's front lawn, watching me. Shh, I hissed. Shh, boy, go home. But Chester didn't howl again. He just watched me, his old eyes gleaming in the streetlights. Then he turned and walked back toward Barbara's house, like he knew what I was doing, like he approved. At home, I opened the box. It took a hammer and a screwdriver to break the lock, but I managed. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. Part of me didn't want to know what was inside, but I had to know. I opened the lid. Inside were 3 items: a phone, an old smartphone, not Daniel's. He had an iPhone, and this was an Android. A USB drive, and a folded piece of paper. I unfolded the paper first. It was a receipt from an auto parts store, dated 3 weeks before Daniel's death, for brake line tubing and fittings. My hands went cold. I turned on the phone. The battery was dead. I found a charger, plugged it in, waited. The phone came to life. It wasn't password protected. I opened the texts. There were only messages to one contact, saved simply as V. I scrolled up to the beginning, 3 months before Daniel's death. Unknown? I can't stop thinking about you. V. Me neither. Unknown. When can I see you again? V. Tomorrow. He has a client meeting. Won't be back until 7. Unknown. I'll be there at noon, 2 months before Daniel's death. Unknown. He doesn't suspect anything? V. He's oblivious. Too trusting. Unknown. Lucky for us. V. Lucky for us. 6 weeks before Daniel's death. V. I can't do this anymore. Unknown? What do you mean? V? Living like this, sneaking around? I want to be with you. Really be with you. Unknown, so leave him. V. It's not that simple. The prenup. If I leave, I get almost nothing. Unknown. Then what do we do? V. I don't know. I need to think. 1 month before Daniel's death. V. I have an idea. Unknown? What kind of idea? V. A way for us to be together, for real. And I wouldn't lose anything. Unknown? I'm listening. V. Not over text. Come over tomorrow. We'll talk. 3 weeks before Daniel's death. V. It's done. I ordered what we need. Unknown. Are you sure about this? V. Do you want to be with me or not? Unknown. You know I do. V. Then trust me. 1 week before Daniel's death. V. I installed it last night while he was sleeping. Unknown. And he didn't notice? V. He never checks his car. Too trusting. Unknown. When will it happen? V. Soon. The next time he brakes hard on a curve or in traffic. Could be tomorrow. Could be next week. Just have to wait. Unknown. This is insane. V. This is us. This is our future. 2 days before Daniel's death. Unknown. I'm getting nervous. What if something goes wrong? V. Nothing will go wrong. I've thought of everything. Unknown. What about his mother? V. What about her? She's old and alone, and I've kept Daniel away from her for years. No one will listen to her. Unknown. And the insurance? V. 350,000 plus the house, plus his savings. We'll be set. Unknown. I love you. V. I know. Just wait. It'll all be over soon. The day of Daniel's death. Unknown. Is it done? V. It's done. Car went off the road on Miller's Curve. Unknown. Jesus. V. Don't go soft on me now. Unknown. I'm not. It's real now. V. It was always real. Now it's finished. Give me a few weeks to play the grieving widow, then we can be together. Unknown. I love you. V, I know. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the phone in my hands, the receipt on the table, the USB drive still unexplored. My son was murdered by his wife for money, for a lover, for a future that didn't include him. Everything I'd suspected, everything I'd feared. It was all true, and I had the proof. I called the police the next morning. I need to speak with someone about my son's death. Daniel Holloway, it was ruled an accident, but I have evidence that it was murder. They sent a detective, a woman in her 40s, Detective Sarah Chen, with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression. Mrs. Holloway, I've reviewed your son's case. It was thoroughly investigated. The brake failure was mechanical. It wasn't mechanical. It was sabotage. I showed her the phone, the texts, the receipt. I watched her face change as she read, watched the skepticism melt into something else. Horror, maybe, or recognition. Where did you get this? My daughter-in-law buried it in her backyard. The neighbor's dog saw her digging at 3 a.m. the night after the funeral. The neighbor's dog. Chester, he's a beagle. He's been coming to my house every day since, howling, like he knew something was wrong. Detective Chen looked at me like I was crazy, but she also looked at the phone in her hands, at the evidence I'd handed her. I need to make some calls, she said. The investigation took 3 months. 3 months of forensic analysis, of witness interviews, of building a case. The police re-examined Daniel's car, still sitting in an impound lot. This time they looked for sabotage, and they found it, scoring marks on the brake lines, consistent with deliberate tampering. Evidence that had been overlooked the first time because no one was looking for it. They traced the receipt to a purchase made with cash at a store near Victoria's gym. Security footage showed a man making the purchase, tall, dark-haired, wearing a baseball cap. The USB drive contained financial documents. Victoria had taken out a life insurance policy on Daniel 6 months before his death, a policy worth $350,000. She was the sole beneficiary, and they identified the man in the texts, Ryan Mercer, Victoria's cousin, not her lover, her cousin, or so everyone thought until the DNA tests came back. Ryan Mercer was not her biological cousin. He was her boyfriend from before she met Daniel, a boyfriend she'd never stopped seeing, never stopped planning with, through 5 years of marriage. The whole thing had been a long con. Marry Daniel. Wait for the right moment. Kill him, collect the money, live happily ever after. Except they hadn't counted on a 12-year-old beagle with insomnia, or a 74-year-old mother who refused to let go. The trial was 6 months later. Victoria and Ryan were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. They hired expensive lawyers, tried every trick, claiming the evidence was planted, that I had framed them, that the whole thing was a grief-stricken old woman's fantasy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The texts, the receipt, the scoring on the brake lines, Victoria's fingerprints on the box she'd buried, security footage placing Ryan near the auto parts store, and me. I testified for 4 hours, told the jury everything, the isolation, the distance, the way Victoria had stolen my son from me piece by piece, before finally stealing his life. Mrs. Holloway, Mom? The prosecutor asked. How did you know to look in that garden? A dog told me, I said. Laughter in the courtroom, but the prosecutor pressed on. Can you explain? My daughter-in-law's neighbor has a beagle named Chester. After my son's death, Chester started coming to my house every day, 45 minutes away. He'd sit on my driveway and howl. When I asked his owner about it, she told me that Chester had been acting strange ever since the night he saw Victoria digging in her garden at 3 a.m. And that's what led you to investigate? That's what led me to know something was wrong. A dog knew, an animal knew, and if an animal could see the truth, I figured I could too. The defense tried to dismiss it. Coincidence, they said. A grieving woman reading meaning into nothing. But the jury listened, and the jury remembered. Victoria was found guilty of first-degree murder. Ryan was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. The judge sentenced Victoria to life without parole. Ryan got 25 to life. When the verdict was read, Victoria screamed. Actual screaming. The careful composure she'd maintained for 5 years, finally cracking into something ugly and raw. "You did this," she shouted at me. "You ruined everything. You were supposed to die alone, you meddling old—" The bailiffs dragged her out before she could finish. I sat in the courtroom, silent, and watched her go. You were supposed to die alone. She was right. That was the plan. Take my son, then take his money, then let time take me. An old woman with no family, no support, no one to ask questions. She hadn't counted on Chester. After the trial, I went to Barbara's house. She was waiting for me on the porch, Chester at her feet. The old beagle looked tired. He'd gotten older during the investigation, slowed down, stopped making his daily pilgrimages to my house. "Margaret," Barbara stood up, hugged me. I'm so glad it's over." "Me too." I knelt down, let Chester sniff my hand. He wagged his tail. I'm slowly, weakly, but wagging. "How is he?" "The vet says he's slowing down. 12 is old for a beagle, maybe another year, maybe less." I stroked his gray muzzle, looked into those sad, knowing eyes. "He knew," I said, "from the beginning. He knew something was wrong. Dogs always know. They're better at seeing the truth than we are." "Barbara, I want to thank you for telling me about that night, for trusting me." "I almost didn't. I was scared. Scared of being wrong, scared of making accusations, scared of Victoria, but Chester—" She looked down at her dog. "Chester wouldn't let me stay quiet. He kept coming to you every day, like he was telling me, do something, say something, help. He's a good boy. The best." Chester closed his eyes, content to be petted, content to be praised. An old dog who'd done something extraordinary and didn't even know it. Chester died 4 months later. Barbara called me crying. He went in his sleep, just went. I woke up and he was gone. I drove over immediately, sat with Barbara in her kitchen while she wept, looked at the dog bed in the corner, now empty. "He waited," Barbara said through her tears. "He waited until justice was done, and then he could go." I thought she was right. Dogs know things we don't, feel things we can't explain. Chester had sensed evil in that house, sensed wrong being done, and he'd spent the last year of his life trying to tell anyone who would listen. He'd found me, an old grieving woman who had nothing left but questions, and he'd given me the answers. We buried Chester in Barbara's backyard, under a tree he'd loved to sit under in the summer. I helped dig the grave, despite my arthritis, despite the pain. It felt right. One last thing I could do for the dog who'd helped me find the truth. It's been 2 years now. I'm 76 years old. I live alone in my house, the same house where Daniel grew up, the same house where I raised him and loved him and watched him become a man. His room is still the same. I never changed it, probably never will. I visit his grave every Sunday, tell him about my week, about the weather, about nothing much. He doesn't answer, of course, but it helps. Makes me feel like he's still there somehow. I adopted a dog 6 months ago, a beagle mix from the shelter. Old, overlooked, nobody wanted him. I named him Chester, not the same Chester, obviously, but the same spirit, maybe. The same knowing eyes, the same gentle soul. Chester II sleeps at my feet while I watch TV, walks with me to Daniel's grave, keeps me company in the long, quiet evenings. I think about Victoria sometimes, sitting in her cell, growing old, knowing she'll die there. I don't feel satisfaction exactly. Nothing will bring Daniel back. Nothing will undo what she did. But there's something like peace, knowing that she didn't get away with it, knowing that my son's death meant something, not just money in her pocket, but justice, truth. A dog helped me find that truth. An old beagle who shouldn't have been able to walk 45 minutes to a stranger's house, but did it anyway, day after day, until someone listened. I think about Chester, the original Chester, often. Wonder if dogs go somewhere when they die. Wonder if he's running in some green field, young again, happy. I like to think he is. I like to think Daniel is there too, throwing a ball, laughing, finally free of the woman who destroyed him. It's a nice thought, comforting, the kind of story you tell yourself when the alternative is too painful. But maybe it's not just a story. Maybe dogs really do know things we don't. Maybe they see truths we're too blind to see. Maybe they love us more purely than we deserve. Chester saved my son's memory. He gave me back the truth about what happened and the chance to make it right. I couldn't save Daniel, but I could give him justice. And in the end, that's something. That's everything.